Okay, I guess I'm ready. I guess I'm ready. Let's go ahead and just stop that. Let's turn that off. Okay, so I'm using a different approach because I want to take pictures. To actually use my computer's camera thing to just take pictures, like, voila. Let's see, that sounds like it looks like it might be a little loud still. Okay. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Shaligram Zone, episode 38. We're going to talk about this Shaligram today. Maybe I'll go big. We've talked about it, and I've been looking at it. I realized I could probably do this. Whoa, my head. Whoa. So we're looking at this Shaligram. What the hell is a Shaligram, you might be asking? Well, if you are asking, that's a rabbit hole. And what the hell is that? I would recommend check out my last 2 episodes. Check out all my playlists on Shaligrams, as well as Shaligram Zone. Anywhere that looks appealing. 272, I believe, the heart of the matter. Some reason pops in my head as like maybe a time frame in my videos where things are kind of developing more in terms of how exactly I interpret Shaligrams. But modern science interprets Shaligrams to be stones having fossilized remains or just fossilized evidence of ancient sea creatures, ammonites, and other things. I have studied them in depth and demonstrated that that is not the case, that they're pseudo-fossils and that they're purely and entirely etched by current flows. And I was analyzing this today a little further, and I don't know how to go about this to really capture the detail that I was seeing in a visually where you guys can see it. This looks way... I need to like make myself smaller. I can just be like, click, bam, take picture. So, I was realizing maybe before we look at this, it was highly useful to look at images of the stone in its totality, which we will do here. Okay. So this is the stone that we are now looking at. get a general layout of the stone. It has that feature there. That's going to be very related to what we're looking at, but not by itself. This feature over here we talked about in the last episode. The first episode on this stone was mainly focused on that spiral hole thing. The second episode was mainly focused on this thing, this ammonite, but like this thing, like the chunk of the ammonite, the chakra, etc. And other details of the stone, like these lines here, like those, are somewhat in both of them, but not really a focus of them per se. But I was looking at this and kind of just moving it around, and maybe we can do that somehow. So like here's this opening. That when we go like this, I feel like this looks way better than when I do it directly through the stream. Maybe it's because I can see it in front of my face and I don't have to look over here and have it be partly part of the screen. But so, I don't know where to begin. I'll just start listing details I noticed. Toothpick. Make sure it's not coated in marijuana. Let's use a different one. This one looks good. Okay. Okay, so one thing I noticed is this fracture thing. Is quite like straight right here. Very straight in that stretch. It's very straight. I just thought that was a little odd. I noticed, and if we go like this and look at it this way, like it's also quite straight there in this stretch, leading like either to it or from it. So we've got this really straight edge here. That's not, notably, it's not like exactly straight off of this. Like if we go at this angle around this side, basically, it's not the same. Like it bends a little bit. It would more so go like that way, maybe. Like it's slightly bending, just of note. But it's abruptly bending here, which we already noticed in the first episode, that this feature has like a double erosional path. So it has a second path here where it eroded past this boundary over it inward, but in like a layering way, which we frequently come across in shaligrams. Mind you, this is just it's not part of anything in terms of like a fossil. It's like a erosional feature of the stone, but it has structure to it, which is very odd when it has this discrete step in how it erodes like this, just for this little short window. But okay, anyway, just noting that. But then it bends abruptly off of that in a generally, I don't know if we can like actually look at this and like figure out this angle. I need some kind of compass. I guess I could open Photoshop up. I don't know if But that's not that important, so let's keep going. So then back here again. Let's see if we can find it. I'm just gonna adjust it. Let me just look at it. Okay, sorry. I might as well just open that one from last episode. With some drawings on it, but whatever. Okay. So we noticed before that fracture thing that we were just talking about here goes generally through like the structure and across, where it's visible, particularly like around here in that area. And down there a bit, those like black porous stretches where it's just porous because it eroded. I liked it over there but this is way more eroded, where it's actually like gouged through it on the right side here. But on the left side it's more subtle. But interestingly, I was looking at this. I hope we can capture it. That's freaking, this thing's incredible. Let me see if I can rest this. So right here, along this direction, maybe you can see it right there, going kind of that way and over that way. It's a little more visible there. The porous area here, and then these white specks right there. My point is there's a boundary that goes through this structure, oddly. Just this little mound of material and erosional path, but like a mound here. Like there's actually pushed up material in like this location. It's not just porous. There's actually like a little structure there that then goes up here too. Oh, sorry. Up here. And then continues over through that like white stretch. So it's going through there, but interestingly, as we go up here, it actually seems, my thought was, where is it going anyway? And it looks almost like it's like shifting. Well, basically to here. To this location right here. Where there's just this little divot mark. Like, that's odd. Because I'm like, how did this form, you know? Like, exactly. What is going on here? Like, it's very, first of all, it's very strong proof that this is not a fossil. If you actually think about it. In that it has this internal structure that spirals in. mind you, it has all these erosional paths that are like non-random, if you will, like they're going across it. But then, like, this structure is pretty big. Like, if we look at like this angle, like there's the toothpick, and like right there to about there, there to there. Oh, sorry. There to there. There to there is like one stretch, although it looks kind of like it's dividing in two. But it has the appearance over here, like in this area, of being basically an ammonite, like indentation, like I guess just this kind of structure, the indentation of it. Like if it's a spiral around, it has like a little indent. It's not just a single layer. But these up here start to really become much more just almost like a worm, like a tube in terms of their shape, or like not having that additional recess. There's a change in that down internally. In here, there's these recesses. That one's way more visible right there. There's a recess in that layer, and then there's a recess right there. But then they stop up here. And then as we go up here, though, it turns into this other thing that then becomes like a focal point in the structure that just happens to be at the edge here. So there's it's hard to show it. There's little rings of these things. Like this structure just keeps going and up, 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 up. And then up here, though, it reaches this little compressional area where they literally shrink and get compressed one against one another. Like they're very tightly packed. And then up here, they reach the point where they're just like super tightly packed to the point it really doesn't make actual sense that this ammonite would have this structure. Like we just basically say, new species. No. New understanding of how currents interact with a matrix. See the smiley face here? He knows what's up. He knows what's up. So I wanted to try my best to explain some things I was seeing. I'm hoping we can capture it here. Like right here, for example, right here, we see this boundary. Right there, this soft boundary in the stone, where it's just like there is a boundary there, but that boundary is just the contour of the stone abruptly changes direction. Like it's not substantial, but it's abrupt, where it's going generally like a flat region here, and then it starts to wrap around in this region, so that there is just this actual boundary there. And that boundary, amongst other things, is the kind of like subtleties. So like, let me try to remember exactly what I was even thinking. So yeah. So a first thing I was thinking is that boundary kind of widens and goes over here, and if we just kind of follow the boundary, it's over this way, like generally underneath this or maybe across it. I'm trying. It's kind of tricky to. Let's see. It's weird when I'm zoomed out that much. It just literally is too much. I don't know. I'm trying to remember exactly, because I was basically spinning this around, tracing the paths, and maybe I can get to the point. So if we follow this path here, here's this ammonite. We follow this path that we looked at before. We follow it up here. We follow it over here. We follow it. It bends, and then it's going this way. And then it becomes very subtle, but we can still see it there in the face there. Like subtly in the face, to the point where it was like not even really part of the face. Just going through here, maybe deflecting a little bit through this area and continuing there, essentially. But I noticed it's generally parallel-ish to this boundary, and then there's another one over here. So we got this boundary that we just traced on the left, and then this other boundary that goes to like basically the end of this ammonite structure, just past it, but essentially to the end, especially when this one's accounted for here. It's kind of like really pointing more towards it, then it like shifts off at the end there. But to the end there, and then to the general boundary of the chakra here, this moving chakra particularly, to that boundary here, and these are generally running parallel, but there's still more ammonite. So imagine over here, we don't see such a flow in the stone, but maybe like there's more related flows out here is what I was thinking. And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, like if there were such a flow, that would kind of make sense for that. So let's imagine there's a flow that's generally cutting across, maybe even further over like this area, and going up this way, and then into this in here to this like left of the face, into the stone, cutting in and spiraling as part of the process. So that's not the totality of how it's creating the structure, but like an element of it is what I was thinking initially. And maybe I can let's go to the images actually, probably. So here they actually are. These are the two things we're looking at. Here's that spiral. Here's that structure. Here's the path that's going to the right. In this way to the left, but to the right from how we were looking at it of the thing. Here's the other path running parallel to the boundary, parallel to there. Like run, basically spiraling here to boundaries, but like notice there's a sort of boundary there in the actual contours of the stone. Like right here, there's stuff going on that's not like an etching path, but it's still like a change in the stone that's relatively abrupt enough to be visible. And it's related to the far side of the chakra. And it seems maybe to be related to this area. And notice here, this path, if we just kind of, instead of wrapping around here, instead of going like down here, if it just kind of goes this way, it basically points at this thing. So imagine if we take this and say like a path of current flow is generally crossing through there, and it goes over that way, and another current flow down here, but a portion of flow goes through there, and then another flow related to over here is like much more near this upper chakra type thing region, whereas this one's coming in more of the side angle that we saw, which my thought is creates this boundary. So when we look at this, maybe we can see it like across here in that area where the porous stuff's going on. There's a boundary that's actually physically there, that kind of like this material right there, that row, like a little mound of material, and that is a boundary. So maybe if like this stuff is going on, where let's say a current flows in from like generally here, I believe that was, am I doing this position right? Yeah. But then it, is that the, oh, that's why I'm doing it wrong. It's not flowing in that angle. It would be flowing more like that. Generally near this boundary, and then wrapping in somewhere over there, basically, and going through there as a pathway, as a boundary though, so that like this region is like this current dominant, whereas the other side of the boundary that is like participating in why it's a boundary is maybe like another current, I was thinking, that's like flowing into the chakra region up there, and then interacting, possibly going the other way, but where this general side is more of that current dominant, leading to a subtle boundary, but like because from the same direction, maybe they are more like subtle, and it's all flowing out, maybe probably interacting with other current flows. We do see a path right here that seems to basically be like related to that area of the structure, which I've not really gotten to or considered. So maybe let's check it out. That path goes from the region we looked at yesterday. Oh, that's subtle. From this. So here's the path we're just looking at off of this ammonite. And then, wow, so cool. Off of this piece that is loose in the stone that we talked about being in the previous episode as being separate and distinctly loose from the chakra, which is incredible that they are both loose, but not one. But this thing that is loose has a current path off of it right here. Really two, it looks like, kind of doing that splitting into two maybe like the other one. That then goes down here, like literally threads through. We can see it threading through. Like, what's that about? Hey, science, are we gonna just ignore these things? Mind you, it threads through over here too, wraps around, and goes to this ammonite. More threading through. More like the extension of the current beyond the boundary of the structure. Another extension of it out there. But then this current comes off of this thing. Let's see. We see it here. It's quite subtle to the naked eye. But we can definitely see it cuts across. Like, what's up with that? How can modern science explain that? With the loose chunk. Oh my god, just I can't even foul them. Just make shit up. That's what I can do. Well, time, erosion, and coincidence. What more do you want? We've already figured it out. It's time, erosion, and coincidence. Perfectly explains this. Perfectly. Okay, sorry. Before I go being an arrogant ass, let's get back to what matters. So, this path that goes through, not the chakra, so it's like, if we go across this ammonite, we've got like energetically relevant points of this eddy structure that is spiraling around the chakras by current flows and pressures that are causing the eddy when this stone was forming, that lead to boundaries that are imprinted in the stone of this boundary here that wraps around energetically related to this boundary, and then another wrapping around current related to this boundary, the chakra boundary basically, and then the other side of the chakra I would guess has another boundary there. We can kind of see maybe something going through there. It's not very pronounced if there is. It looks like maybe like this feature is kind of like a, I don't know, like a bend in the rock at least. that goes more towards the center of the chakra as it wraps around. I don't know. So it's possible that that one can tend to get skipped, if you will, energetically and not be etched in so much. And then probably another boundary around this, specifically right around that point where the indent goes, which is possibly what we see there. Like relating, at least, possibly to this area, which is interestingly like 2 chakras and 2 lobes. Okay, and then finally over here we start to approach this like cross current region that happens a lot in ammonites, where we see like the middle of the lobe having some up-down type of flow across its structure, some reason that I'm still somewhat working out, but seems to be a repetitive and like distinguishably there feature that this also is exhibiting. So this would just be another like case in point of that kind of thing that I've come across many times. And then again, like near the end here, near the end, not quite the end, although I wonder if we kind of go like that, like it's certainly bending from the actual angle. The initial angle looks much more towards the end. The toothpick is not, there we go. Need a freaking, generally like that, I guess. So it's much more related to the actual end of the ammonite structure. So we've got relationships across this ammonite, and then that one, specifically this one, continues across and goes again to this boundary. So then we've got this width, basically, in which current flow seemingly is going through between essentially like the chakra, not this, but like the chakra itself over, and maybe like the edge of the chakra, even like more related to this boundary, this area, than the actual chakra region, but over around here, and then over across like a width in which a flow, a band of flow is generally perhaps propagated into the stone over here, where it runs around, notably around like the, if we go like this, how do I, around, there we go. So here's the, like, relatively the flat top of the pole. It's like a pole of the stone that we were talking about before in the previous episode. Sorry if everything sounds ridiculous. Much love. Thanks for being here. Hugs. Okay, pole of the stone. Generally around here, it seemed that maybe is ultimately related to the ammonite, but like as we go off of the pole, like it's really, there's no sign until we go down around this edge, and then like that's where this thing is, along that face, which is totally different angle. Than this face. Like basically a 90-degree angle, as best I can show it. So the current almost like waterfalls is my thought. Like is being forced down at that point. It goes around the pole and then down into the stone itself here. But it does so in a very drilling way that like almost perhaps like springs back upward as well to create like a chakra at the top, that pseudo chakra, basically where these spiral rings kind of converge. I think you can kind of see it now. The layers going into around here-ish. Like layer, 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 one after another. And then going through there, though, like really down the drain, literally. Like, it's a drain that current went through. As this is behaving like a cosmic system, like a planet, having like surface pressures of current flows along the surface, etching into the stone. Due to the pressures that were causing this current to flow in and through the matrix of the stone, and of the general matrix in the region that was being shaped into all these shaligrams in a very cosmic way. So we've definitely got a relationship between this structure and this ammonite over here, just based on these boundary lines that are all like not part of either structure, or just in the stone, but clearly related to it all. Just lodged. Poking it. What the fuck? He just keeps poking it. Hey man, sometimes you just gotta poke. Poke the shaligram. Poke the bear. Hey bear. Hey bear. Hey bear. Hey dudes, your science sucks. Science sucks. Everything you guys teach is false ultimately, except the most basic, like 2 + 2 = 4. Your science sucks. Hey guys, Guys, I'm not a fossil. Guys, he's poking this hot sacred cosmic thing. Oh my. Dude, the cascading effects through this cosmos. Why is he doing this? Not even in focus. Oh, that's a real interesting little circle thing there. Whoa. Like, what? And it looks like it's got a second half. Something going on above it. Like a related part above it that got separated. Crazy. Like, right generally center. So my thought is that, yeah, it's doing like this, and then let's find another picture though. Guess I could take a picture. Just my camera angle. Or my size photo zoom is too much zoom. It's hard to take a good picture. Do it this way so I can draw on it. If a current comes in basically over on this side, and a second current is coming in over here, I believe it was, right here, and like wrapping in here, and then I believe going ultimately down here. I believe this is the path right there, and cutting across this way. Like, in terms of a path, like, it's not just going that way, it's also basically, I would say, spiraling around and down and down and in to this stone, while this is also interacting with us. Something in their interactions is relevant in that it has like a same current dividing, maybe even, I'm just thinking, relating to that thing we see under it here, like the way this is dividing, like maybe even relating to this process. I don't know in what way. I'm just thinking. Wow, I could see it did it in there too. What the? Okay. Guess maybe not. I need to take pictures of this and combine them all. You can really see some contours around here. Oh my god. So cool. It's really tricky. Let's just try to follow. Let's say there's a current flow that goes this way through like a band of current flow that goes through there. That then gets focused, like it's running into resistance from all directions. So that pushes it into the rock, but it's running into resistance then as it travels in. And its distribution of flows to the left and right side of this gets kind of pinched together by surrounding pressures. As this current passes through the resistance ultimately by cutting this pathway and shaping this to like occupy a space where it can create like a engine to drive the current through, to get it through, because it's running into resistance and the pressure behind it will not have the resistance in front of it, so it just takes complex forms because it must get through, because there's so much pressure behind these forces that surrounding pressures hold in place and cause to flow in complex ways, where then it got through the stone though by going through this way, and then it reached this area where it like vented, I guess, by going back into the stone over here, because essentially it's like a planet going into surrounding pressure. If it's not just going to flow off of the stone, it gets pushed back into the stone, like a low pressure in a high pressure surroundings kind of thing. And I guess it goes through here, where it specifically goes more so maybe through the far side, and then my thought is it goes through the far side and then comes back in the resistance on the bottom side now of the ammonite, but it goes in from the top side, and then anything that gets really through from the top side continues and erodes along the side of the ammonite as it etches out through this side of the shaligram, making the ammonite, that is, along the side of the shaligram, and then it runs into other currents where it goes down this way and is then related to this ammonite again. So we run into that ammonite again when we go through this path. there's other like straight lines here that maybe we can would be worth following real quick. This one, for example, going through, 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 and then it goes. That's the one that goes to the edge of this ammonite there, and then wraps back around, and then seems to fade out around here. But maybe we can look a little closer. Possibly, like it looks like we can see it going across there for a second there. There, like in that area. Like going across there. And then maybe bending in resistances to generally at least join this current here that was flowing out of this thing again. And join it up here in this area. If we can find any cool features by looking really, really close that we wouldn't see otherwise, just randomly. Like, what if we look in this line? We found literally crazy. We have found crazy structures by looking really, really close. In these things. I don't know if we can see in this one that close. Kind of cool looking, nothing particularly. Lots of little chakra type things going on, I guess. Right there, looking kind of like a suture. Right there. Right, that little like block right there that's got erosion all around it. Looks kind of like the parts of an ammonite, like round suture patterns when it's eroded though. I don't care. Fiber. Probably from this cloth I have it on, or just kind of looking through. It's kind of, that's interesting at the top there. Maybe I can take a picture. We see erosion here. We see it here. We see it here. We've got this crack going through here, basically. With there again, a larger one. This larger one has even an outer boundary of its largeness. couple little ones that kind of are like one there. It's hard to do with my mouse, so I'm being lazy. Then, etc. Like I don't need to bother to go through there, but then up here where these are, there seems to be like, dude, like here especially, there's something that looks almost like it could have eroded through. And then like generally here, generally across. Basically, like this boundary continued. And then even here, where that is, like, and then here we see it kind of extending, and then here. Whoa, I'll really push that around, I guess. Again, looking like a suture on the left side, like dendritic. Under the upper, up here, I guess. Oh yeah, I can freaking mouse over it. Oh, I can mouse over it. I don't know if I'm just kind of seeing it because that's like lots of things that can be seen in these, but like right here, and then over here, kind of similar, I guess. Like makes me think that like maybe right here is also relatively similar, is what I was kind of thinking though. Maybe again over here in that area where there's like little layers or something one after another of where the current was flowing and etching, I guess. Just too close to the Shaligram. Oh, if that's a freaking ammonite. Oh my god. It's got the curious feature of the divided ammonite. Like it's very common to find ammonite structures that are like divided basically like that, and like just a part of it, and then it still shows like a overall structure here. That's like, and then even a eddy over here that's got like a nucleus there, maybe. That's maybe even like its final chamber that tends to have like it literally an eddy in the final chamber that's visible a lot of times. Possibly then relating to like these things here. And maybe some kind of balance point if they were flowing opposite directions. What is going on right there? Is that... I gotta look at that. Let's just assume it's dust or something, whatever. Just want to kind of see if I can. That's how big it is. Friggin' too small to really even poke a part of it and feel it. Its surface roughness. It probably is currents going both directions. One of them being like pushed up into the boundary of the surrounding matrix. Like over here, it looks like it's like going up in this area. And then back down in this area, or vice versa. Maybe even cutting across there. Maybe switching, like one goes up, like literally. In terms of the dominant direction of current flow when this was being shaped. It ain't no simple current flows. It is complex currents. That's cool. That little, almost like a freaking diamond looking thing. Darn, I think I need to make an episode. I just need to make stuff so I can share without being unable to just quickly show it. Like having issues just showing the stone adequately to feel like it's followable on why there's interactions between the ammonites beyond what I was like talking about earlier and in the other ones. We see the same thing here. So that's worth noting right here. This boundary. The way this is, the actual boundary, and this boundary, but especially the upper one. The way it is very similar to just like the way this is. These just openings in the stone where a current went. So it's etched. It's literally very similar to how this is. So you could imagine different scales of the same process would produce like something of this amount, something of this amount, something of this amount, and then something of, say, this amount where it actually frees it from the matrix entirely, or something of this amount where it's just not there. There's not a, or like, say here, this amount, where it just removes it from the stone. That's another thing I noticed. It's occurring to me. Is this? It's hard to show it. The angle of these is relatively changing like this. Where like the first one maybe is like a current flow sliding in this way, and then it like put off of a flow more like related here, where then it feeds in and ramps off in resistance and spirals around and just creates an ammonite structure. Hey man, welcome. Well, we're looking at a Shaligram. The Shaligram Zone is a place where we look at Shaligrams. What is a Shaligram? They're from the Himalayas only. They're sacred stones in Hinduism. They're believed to contain fossils according to modern science, such as ammonites. But they are entirely etched and shaped by current flows, as studying their surfaces and details demonstrates, such as this anomalous strange feature here that is just like a spiral portal into the stone. Wow. But they have many features. They all are different. Here's some Shaligrams. Here's some that I call disprove science. So like what really happens is there's basically a matrix material of particles like black shale, quartz and pyrite particles that are being concentrated into like a matrix, and then there's a water flow that is flowing in the presence of this matrix while it is like in the process of forming, and this water flow is evidently highly energetic, so that it like propagates in like fundamental like basic chemistry, almost ways that are like fractally important, like galactic and solar system-ish type processes that are literally fractal, that when these stones were forming, it was alive, like a planet, like a star, behaving like a cosmic system in a fractal way, while the current flows of water were shaping it in probably heat, like hot water, which is related to pyrite and quartz, is apparently related to like the presence of a heat in forming those things. So it's probably hot water flowing, but it would do things like this where it literally drills in, gets into the stone, and then eddies in the stone to create an actual like toroidal structure of the current flows that then etches into to the stone to then allow for enough space for the current to like push out its boundaries to then have like a pressure balance, so that when like the flow gets in and builds up pressure behind it, because it can't, like the current behind it can't be stopped, it's so energetic that it's being forced into these places where these stones are being shaped. It then like flows into it, and in order to vent, it literally etches into the stone in an eddy until it actually vents from the stone, at which point it either continues to vent, like sometimes it'll continue to vent, other times it will just like reach the point of venting that the structure is sound, so it doesn't do it more. So like this one, it eroded into the back of the stone and propagated through the stone and created an ammonite structure. This one, it has another pseudo ammonite type thing forming within the actual shell of the ammonite, which has a trail in the stone and all sorts of features, all sorts of details, like they're mathematically relevant in terms of the matrix. Like the ammonite is of course mathematical, is like a phi ratio spiral thing, but the matrix that supposedly the fossil shell of the ammonite was captured in shouldn't have unrelated but mathematical characteristics. Like this, for example, here is this lobe structure, and then here's a lobe structure just like it, but then all of the thing is a lobe structure just like it. So it's like a fractal, but then this lobe structure is like towards a chakra that just didn't form, because it's essentially what happens then is there's several eddies that interact with one another that like can take form, but like the dominant eddy takes form. So like this eddy up here was the most dominant, so it took form, but then an eddy down here was also happening that was interacting with it seemingly, which is probably why there's another eddy between them. And they were basically all competing for the territory of the Shaligram Stone matrix. And the end product of the Shaligram is a product of how the eddies interacted. So this one was just like, it couldn't push the boundary over here because currents, even though it's dominated here, this area was dominated by this like lobe structure that it was trying to form like a complete ammonite. So there was some kind of eddy here. It just wasn't etching into the stone because these other features were dominating the pressures. So instead, it only subtly shows up over here. But it's the whole stone is like that, and this is like a common feature in shaligrams for the like fractal structure to repeat itself. And here, another one where it's just drilling in. Like this is not touched by a drill or something. This is literally water current shaped. Water currents did this to the stone, and it's evidenced in that it happens so prevalently and relates to the structure in very important ways. This one is not as clear, at least in this image, as to why it's not just like someone did it to have this feature. Like it doesn't really make sense. Like what the heck? Someone must have drilled into this stone. No, it literally is not the case. I've like considered these types of things to the point where I've realized these are just, that's how some of them are found, because there's current flows that are literally drilling in, tend to drill in in a manner where they'll like, there won't be a resistance, like some boundary, and the flow will flow into it, and it will get into that enough, like create a nook. But then as it gets in, it creates more of a nook to a point where it actually can change shapes. Like as it creates this nook, it typically, what it does is it spirals on the surface, creating a nook that actually has boundaries. Like sometimes there will be boreholes that are exclusively like on the boundary, where the interior section remains attached to the boundary by little like threads that it didn't erode along just the boundary, because the eddy is so like held out along the boundaries of pressure that it's actually not eroding through the center, but around some structure or some region that then will erode the boundary rather than the totality. But when it goes into it, it will basically create an eddy that does like that, just swirls, and then that eddy will like run out of space, so it'll bend. It'll literally bend inward like this and extend because there's exterior pressures. So like when this current is coming in, it's doing that because there's pressures involved in this current flow leading it to there, that then as it runs into the surface, in some instances those pressures are present, not always, but they're present when the features occur, so that there's actually an incapacity for this eddy to grow beyond the boundary. So instead it buckles internally and creates this little like divot thing there, where the structure of the eddy changes, and when that happens, it leads to different things. So like it can basically create a current that travels not here at that point, but instead around here and around here, but where sometimes it goes across and basically wraps around like that, leading to like a nucleus region in the center of it as a systematic structure. So if we look at Etsy here, where I get many Shaligram images because that's just like the best place to find them. If we go to this vendor and check out some of his Shaligrams, he's got one in particular. Oh wow, these are new. I haven't seen those. This one that just comes to mind. So like it's doing that here, where there's this thing here, but it's doing it in a way where as it erodes in, it creates the central point basically by not eroding there. This nucleus, it creates a nucleus, but it anomalously erodes like little divots. Like this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. It's not really the structure of any fossil, especially when they're also over here outside of the structure of the fossil, if it's a fossil, but it's in the fossil, supposed fossil, as clearly related to its actual structure and why its structure is what it is. And it's those same little, basically like scrape marks from the current scraping into the stone and removing material, but then running into resistance at a certain point in the stone, where then the current just goes up and it removes like a layer of material across a little stretch there, and then it does it again, and it is eroding into the stone. And sometimes it creates like actual much more structure to those things, like this one, and so on is another example one where it does that, but it doesn't always take that shape. Like it can also change the planes. So like this would be happening in here, where it has like the protrusion up there and the eddy going in, so it's creating like a little nub as it extends into the shaligram, but it's eddying like around this nub, in an eddy back and forth around this nub. Sorry if this is hard to visualize as I draw. Where like it's going in around this basically, and off of this point though, like that, and across here as well as like a shape. But sometimes it can essentially enter a different plane, at which point the angle changes. So instead of eddying this way, the eddy starts to, like, it digs in enough that the path of least resistance changes the process entirely, so that the eddy actually ends up moving in this direction. So it goes back and forth this way. And next thing we know, we have chakra type structures like this, as they're called in Hinduism, and then lobes out this way that are then forming an ammonite in a different plane as these currents like evolve, eroding these stones and shaping them. So that's what we're looking at, is shaligrams that are amazing and have many, like here's one that's just cool. Like the features of the stone, the ammonite is up here, but where is the boundary of the ammonite? It's not even clear, because the matrix and the boundary of the ammonite are like, they're just one. It flows into it. The ammonite's up there, it flows into this matrix. We even see like an indentation here, like where a mass of a ammonite would like make sense. So like this portion that is just like containing the ammonite also has an ammonite shape to it, because it was being shaped further. Like the eddy that was here was extending through the shalagram's base material down below and actually shaping it, not to this point, but beginning to. Like that's how it got to this point, is it started from some more basic state of material that then was eroded and shaped by currents, where it's frozen in time in these stones, and it's many legitimately utterly unique and profound ways that are just amazing. And just the spectrum of just details that these stones have is out of control. Out of freaking control. Like here's one where it has an ammonite forming in this crack because it's related. An ammonite over here, that like the boundary, there's another thing, like they align. Let me pull up this alignment thing. I assume you're not there anymore. If you're still there, that's cool. Thanks for hearing me as I continue to talk. I just assume you're not there. Just talking to myself, that shit. Okay. I'm talking to my recording really anyway, so if you're there, I appreciate it. If you're not there, That's totally reasonable, and I'm talking myself to the future recording, so I'll just keep talking. But these alignments matter, where like particular details are related, like this chakra, where energy flows down like a toroidal structure through the center and like flows out and wraps around and like actually through it. So when there's a chakras pointing at each other, it is a tendency to see relationships of that like trajectory, if you will, with other things such as this path here, and then these ones pointing over here at that one, and then this lobe, it has an erosion at the far tip, at the far base, which is another thing that is very common in these, is the erosion is non-random. It happens at weak points. Like if there's an eddy within a region, then it's going to basically concentrate pressures every time to its like focal point at some like where all the flows pushing outward in some region of the eddy concentrate around some boundary of pressures to a far point, where then systematically that location tends to be a weak point in the structure, where like either the ammonite extends from, because that's how they grow to larger sizes, by forming extensional features like off of here. So it's same process, same thought pattern, different angle. Instead of going left to right to left kind of pressures that kind of pinch off everything off at the end here, instead top to bottom pressures in this lobe over on the left side, that where every single force in that region that is down is generally adding to the concentrated pressure at that location, which then leads to weak points. And generally like the same things happening along the whole boundary, where the whole boundary is like a weak point in the pressures, where then current is caused to flow more, which then literally erodes the material to shape the final product. It's not just like they're just not really fossils. They're all ammonites, as Shaligrams demonstrate. All ammonites are not fossils, and almost a huge spectrum of things labeled fossils are not fossils. Fundamentally, they are fossils of current flows, if anything. Like, they're not fossils of anything that lived in the sense of like a turtle lives and you and I live. They were living eddies like a hurricane lives. It was an alive system that is not here anymore. Like, the eddies are not still flowing, albeit maybe fractally. They're still like cosmic in a sense. Like, the ethereal energy within these stones may retain cosmic life of that nature, where it's like a universe in and of itself. That is a thing that's going on with these. But the eddy is not still happening to shape the stone. It is shaped. It is what it is. And this is just how they are, though, where they align in relevant ways all the time. All the time. And that's even what we were just looking at, is how these features align and just looking at the features, maybe in this Shaligram here. To kind of compare, it's very complicated. There's so many things that it's almost like overwhelming to try to explain in truth from like a right now point. Like I literally have easily over 100 hours, maybe pushing 200 hours of literally just looking at Shaligrams on video and documenting their details and kind of going through why they definitely are not fossils and are etched by currents. Basically from a, wow, these are not fossils, they're etched by currents realization, to exactly like really figuring it out as best as I can. That I am at today. I mean, I've spent a couple of years doing this since I saw them. They immediately captivated me. I literally immediately knew the moment I saw one of them that it was profound and important and not a fossil. It just is so clear. As someone who happens to be the theory of everything discoverer, like also who quit his job for that purpose when he made major discoveries and just unrelated to this in physics that the world just simply will not acknowledge because people are arrogant and fucks. They just won't even talk about it. Best way to rebut is silence. Having a structure that means you don't have to rebut. You can just pretend to be correct, and since that's the state of the world, they just get to be in like the public's eyes, and people don't know better. But like these stones are literally unstudied scientifically. They're studied subtly, like by people who have no background to understand them. Basically, it would be like a cook trying to study I don't know like the composition of Mars internally. Like, it doesn't make any damn sense. They're just not related. That's the real critical element, is the people who study these things are not actually educated in the subject matter that is what these are. They are educated in like biology and things that these are not. And as a result, they literally cannot perceive that they're not fossils. It's just taken for granted. There's never been a moment in time when humanity proved that ammonites are in fact fossils. It's just been taken for granted as an assumption that is like an educated guess that just seems so obvious that it just doesn't need to be proven. But the issue is they're not fossils. They're literally not fossils at all. There was not a single living creature involved in the direct imprint of these structures in terms of their bodily contents are just on display, frozen in time. Some shell of their being, no. Nothing like that. The entire spectrum of ammonites are all eddies that really teach us about chemistry and, again, galaxies and cosmic systems like solar systems much more than we realize when we look at these as if they're just shells of sea creatures. We cannot fathom that we can learn from them in the terms of a chemistry and bio and physics, like galactic scale type things, and geology too, really. I mean, they're like little planets. Earth definitely is a Shaligram in that it has Shaligram characteristics. Let's see if I can find it. Shaligram Earth. Notice that Shaligram has it doesn't just have this spiral thing at the top, it actually has rib type, like the spiral continues into the stone subtly, where it doesn't usually do that. It doesn't even make any sense. They don't make sense. That's the actual issue in terms of fossils. They literally are impossible fossils. They can't be fossils. They prove themselves to not be fossils by their details. They just haven't been studied. Underneath it all, that is the issue. The moment the Western civilization encountered Shaligrams, they had already determined that ammonites are fossils. It was already established in modern science in terms of the conclusion thought to be established fact. And to a point where papers aren't questioning it, they're just taking it as fact and working from there. They don't think about it. They don't even consider the possibility that they're not fossils. They just are treated as fossils. As far as they're concerned, ammonites are fossils. And so when they encountered Shaligrams, as far as they were concerned, those are fossils too. But they didn't look at them, except for some paleontologists who are just literally not educated in the proper subject matter of physics, chemistry, geology. They're really not required to even take any of these classes, let alone be deeply educated enough and spend enough time thinking about this subject matter to actually understand its like flaws and like things that they can put weight on and things that they should maybe not put so much weight on. And they just refer to physicist A and say he's got it, they've got it. All the physicists who know physics have figured it out. I don't need to know any of that. I'm working on biology. The physicists haven't claimed these. The chemists haven't said, hold up, those are not fossils. So basically, by default, they've fallen down the rung to the next scientist in line that it could apply to, the biologist, and it went into paleontology, the study of fossils, because people thought they were fossils, but they just are not. They're just not. Instead, they're incredible. They are actually literally originate from right here. The third eye of Buddha Damodar Kund is where shaligrams originate, which itself is a shaligram. We can see a lobe. It is a lobe of an ammonite structure. Like the area is that shaligrams originates in is shaligrams itself. Like this one. This is Damodar Kund region. This, I mean, it's literally, I can't, for some reason this won't let me zoom in sometimes. But it's got like actual tiers like that on this wall here in this structure. Where there's chakras, it's just like it here, but then it's sideways, so it's doing the like dominant recessive thing where it's got an eddy this way, but then it's got another eddy that's more in this plane that's creating a lobe out this way, but it's much more subtle, but it's still present. And then it's doing it again over here in a layered way. So it's one of many examples of the locale at Damodar Kund region that is shaligrams. Here's one, like a lobe. Like, literally like a lobe. Instead of being like a chamber of a lobe specifically. Like, I guess like this would be this piece, like a chunk of this right here, a chunk that hasn't been so shaped into the dendrites and suture patterns, but instead it was shaped enough that it was like part of a larger eddy, so that it had the general contours. It even has like steps like it right here, so imagine a chakra. Like, it also itself is kind of like a chakra. Chakra being these things like here, like back there. Chakras, this one's incredible. It's got an ammonite imprint here, but then right here is an ammonite here, but that's like chambers going around. So like, but back here is another ammonite. So it had recessive ammonite forming generally on this area, probably off of this and off of this somewhat, like unsure, like a balance between the two kind of ammonite. And then the one back there that's in this plane, and then the one in this plane. And then just all sorts of other details, because there's just crazy details on these stones that are just out of this world. Out of this world, how incredible these stones are. They cannot be understated or overstated. It cannot be overstated how utterly profound shaligrams are. Just eroding in, like the way, like this is not eroded, but it's really eroded, and it's so defined. The definition in the erosion is very clear. And there's so many other details about why these are important. Like, it demonstrates that they were eroded, and that what that means, really, what that really means. Why were they eroded? How were they eroded? Why were these pressures there? And the answer is the flood. That's the answer. The answer is the fucking flood is why. so cool. They're just so cool. Let's see, like, I should probably get to bed. Here's one where it's spiraling. Like, you can literally see how it doesn't make sense. Like, let's say this is the boundary of this ammonite here. But then it like skips down, goes over, skips down, goes over. Almost like it's like around some corner kind of thing with skipping going on. But then it's got this one going over this way, and then one's going down this way. I didn't really do it justice to show its curvature. But then over here, so if you imagine like an eddy here in this area that has bands like that and like that and like that, like it actually has an aspect where there's an eddy going through here, just eddying, that then wraps around this chakra, so it's like eddying in multiple planes. It's not just sitting here, but it's like wrapping around the structure and then extending out in the pressures to erode further until it can vent, basically. Whenever these form like this, they try to vent because they are building up pressure when the current is getting into the stone, so it like vents to balance out. But if the pressure behind it is high enough, it keeps growing even though it's vented. So like it can have an opening in the stone and still form like additional features post the opening in the stone happening. Or it can just stop because it's vented enough that the process is done. Here's a good example of why they're not shaligrams. Why they're not fossils. Why shaligrams demonstrate that ammonites are not fossils. This ammonite actually doesn't make any sense. It has a standard ammonite type thing going on, but then it has anomalies, which these are peculiar. I call them like Halton Arp's Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, that demonstrate that redshift is not fully understood in cosmic sense in galaxies, the redshift of galaxies. I don't know if you know anything about Halton Arp's work, but he has a Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies that's like highly significant. Regardless of his interpretation of things, it's still very important because it's like not just normal galaxies, things that are odd. Shaligrams are like the equivalent in the ammonite world, where ammonites that people are more colloquially aware of are more like the stable and common galaxy that people are maybe more used to, whereas the peculiar galaxy is like the ones that have features that are like showing parts of the process and steps in the process better than the end product can show, because it's not just like the end product, it's the steps in the process too. So we can see like a bigger picture of things when we see peculiar galaxies. So too is the case with shaligrams. When we can see peculiar ammonites, they reveal the truth of the matter that they're not fossils. So over here, this fossil reduces in width, like it was up here in terms of its like actual height or whatever. So and it reduces in height, I'd say. Reduces in its height. In this portion here, we see a top. It's here. We see it. We can see physically in the shaligram, the boundary of it is here. It's not just a piece of the ammonite, it is the top of the ammonite. Like it has these rib type things here, so we know it's the top. But the thing is the stone doesn't just show that. The stone says, hold the phone. The ammonite was actually normal sized. It used to be this big. It's actually got these ripples here, these ribs, these teeth marks here, these teeth, and these ribs up here for a reason, because there was a shell there that had that structure. So this shell that's indented here somehow imprinted itself up here. It doesn't make sense. It fundamentally disproves that ammonites are fossils, because the only way this can happen is if there's an eddy that's already occupying the space, and then it gets pushed in while the eddy is happening and erodes this region of the stone to have an eddy's pushed in shape over here. So it just takes the shape, and it's noticeably exactly halfway in the ammonite. It's like not arbitrary, like the height of this side basically is half. And it also like takes this chunk here and just removes it so that this segment is like more normal shaped. Like this shape over here is repeated basically here, even though it used to be bigger. Like it used to make sense there. No, it just does this. And what does the modern scientists say? Nothing. They say, surely that's fine. Surely that's a fossil. We don't need to explain it. We'll say, well, fossils can do that. Fossilization can do that. Well, if the fossil, well, I don't need to indulge you and never answer how this could possibly be a fossil. That's what we'll say. Because there is no actual explanation. That's the key. There isn't. And they just are in denial when like actually forced against their will to consider it as authorities. Like, anyone in modern science who feels themselves an authority on this matter to a point where they would be offended would just basically deny this without any grounds, because they have no grounds. It's legitimately impossible. I've challenged them to explain this. I said, this is a challenge to all scientists. Explain. I know you cannot, so acknowledge I have a point. They don't want to do it. They just don't want to do it. They mad. They like, nah, man. This dude's also saying a flood happened. That's the problem. That's the problem. He's saying a lot of shit besides this, that too. If it was just that, maybe. Like here, we can see it just kind of eroding little strips, but like basically doing that. Kind of interesting. gives me the impression of like a positive, negative. Like it went this way, some of it came back this way. Positive, like a little more, and then some of it came back less. Some reason, I feel like, just looking at that. Here's another thing with like erosion path through. Another, just seeing the relationships between them. Like we can even see like here, down, boop, boom. Even though this looks a lot like this. It looks a lot like that, even though that, which would imply like it's chakra, like this kind of thing, was off the stone generally, like here, and it imprints. The imprint is just a part of it, which would mean, oh, this structure right here is really not related from a fossil standpoint, but it's clearly related. We see like a boundary that goes over and just straight down into this like point, and then boom, point back up, and then wrap out. Like it's too clearly related, and it's almost like it's making a chakra opposite this chakra that's like cutting down here. So it's adding another tier like this by cutting down and just creating an eddy here. It's not actually reaching up to here, maybe because it's going up this way. Like the top chakra is eroding there, so that the whole of the lobe goes off this way and up this way, but then it goes off the side of the rock in weird ways, which then interact with it some more over here, like this boundary generally relating over there. And probably like this boundary, I bet, relating to over there. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see if we can find it. Wow, so cool. Wow, much cool. Much cool. I think we sort of could see it there. That's the bottom one, that's the top one. I mean, it's generally like up, down. It's not, maybe not smoothly wrapping around to it. Like this one kind of wraps around to it, as it is like a lobe off of this, like going down and over. But then over here it's just like a whole new ammonite, because it's a different face of the stone, and like this one eddy just wasn't strong enough to like truly extend into these boundaries, so multiple eddies formed. This is what's going on with shaligrams and why they are amazing, and this is the Shaligram Zone. So I hope that made some sense. I gotta get the hell to bed though, because it is 2:10 and I am fucking tired. Real quick, because I might not reference it, and if I forget, this is what it was on. I definitely linked it in my YouTube, but who knows how, it might just be one day. My Rumble is all that's left, and I didn't bother to put it in there. So, if I forget to, I'll put it in there that way. Alright, peace out.